Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I'm so excited that you're able to join us because what we are going to talk about is very informative. And I have Melanie Tonia Evans coming all the way from Australia to talk to us about narcissistic abuse. When we hear abuse, a lot of times our mind goes directly to physical abuse because that's the one that has the evidence, right? But narcissistic abuse is one very interesting one. Melanie is one of the people doing a lot of work around it. So I'm super excited to have her join us. But before we go on, have you subscribed yet? If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button because that is how you're going to get notifications every week when we upload new episodes. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Empowered for Balance on all the platforms, Facebook, Instagram. We're on Twitter now. All right, enough of my talking. Let's go right to the topic. But before that, let me introduce Melanie. Hi, Melanie. How are you?
Hi, Emma. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you and to finally get to have this conversation with you. But before we go on, can you introduce yourself and who you are?
Yeah, well, sure. I want to make it more about the listeners, but just briefly, I am a global narcissistic abuse recovery expert. I've been doing this work for around 13 years. And it came about really kind of by accident. It found me because I married a narcissist. I really thought that this was the love of my life. I didn't even know what a narcissist was. And I went through a life and death experience where the marriage nearly killed me. And at that time, I was trying to find solutions to recover. I really wanted to recover. And I really wasn't able to find anything. And I had an incredible epiphany experience, which people could read about on my website, but it was at my lowest point where I'd had a complete psychotic and adrenal breakdown. And I absolutely surrendered, and I'd been quite spiritually personal development minded, and I had an epiphany. Of how to heal from the inside out and a path to take, and I took that path, and it ended up not just giving me a recovery, a mere recovery. I was able to completely dissolve and overcome, well, first of all, a psychotic breakdown that I was told I would need 3 antipsychotics for the rest of my life, even to
Wow.
basically function. I had an adrenal breakdown. I had complicated post-traumatic stress disorder, agoraphobia, fibromyalgia. I hadn't been able to eat for 6 months. I was around 80 pounds. My hair had fallen out in clumps. And I couldn't even function on a minute-to-minute basis. And now I have zero symptoms. I thrive. I have a beautiful partner. I have an incredible life. I now am blessed to be a part of a movement that is in over 130 different countries. We've touched the lives over, I think it's now 6 million people worldwide,
Wow.
and created a recovery program that now is recommended by doctors and psychologists and domestic violence workers worldwide, that has been found to heal people from the inside out, where they've tried everything and anything else. And it's not, this movement's so beautiful because it's not just about surviving, getting away, and then being stuck with the symptoms and having a reduced life. It's literally about moving into a self, a true self and a true life, where you thrive way beyond what you were living even before the abuse, and even if abuse is all you've ever known. So I'm very passionate about it, as you can
Yes.
probably tell.
Yep, yep. And I followed you and I've read a lot of your material and I can tell that you're very passionate about what you do. But just so we can get a good background for the woman who doesn't, or for the person who doesn't know what
Yeah.
narcissistic abuse is, what
Yeah.
is it at all in layman's terms?
Well, originally, Emma, it's very tricky, and for the listeners out there, it's tricky originally to pick, because a narcissist doesn't walk into your life with a T-shirt on saying, "Hello, I'm a narcissist." They're
Yeah.
usually, and the thing is too, you might be born into a family of narcissism where it's been your normal. So you just think, well, this is what you might look at other families and think, well, they're a bit different to mine, but you may not. Okay. So really what it is if you're meeting a narcissist, for example, say a love partner or a business associate or a boss or whatever, they can be very charming. They can be very, they're very good at sizing you up and working out who you are and appealing to you to get you to connect with them and bond with them, because that's when they can start infiltrating you and messing with you. So look, the thing is, once the cracks appear in a person with narcissism, this is when you will see the narcissistic characteristics. And really the first one is they get very triggered over things that normal adults wouldn't get triggered over. So we may think that a narcissist is uber confident, and nothing could be further from the truth. So they're actually a deeply, deeply insecure self. So it might be a look or something you say or a perceived criticism, or they're not getting enough attention, or maybe you're in a group and somebody else has got the limelight and they don't. They're going to get very offended. They may attack you later and really question you on your loyalty or the way, so they get very offended very easily. And the thing is, they do not take responsibility for their behavior. So if they do something hurtful, which all humans can do, okay, but what happens is they will do it. And then when you say to them or pull them up, there'll be an excuse, there'll be a twist, there'll be a turn, there'll be a stonewalling, there'll be a projection. They'll bring up something about you that you did 2 months ago that you thought was resolved and now it's back in the fray. They will bring in allies, real or fabricated. They'll say something very nasty that's a real low blow. And you will literally feel like you are arguing with a 5-year-old in an adult's body who refuses to get basic fundamental decency. And you'll think you're going crazy. That's very, very stock standard. And, people may say, well, they will eventually apologize. That should never have to happen after 2 weeks of arguing and you're about to walk out the door with your suitcase. And then all of a sudden, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. You're right, I'll get help. But then the thing is, we have to understand with narcissistic people or anybody, words mean nothing, it's actions. Yeah. And actions, a non-personality disordered person who has got humanity, if they mess up, they may be a bit unconscious and a little bit stubborn, but then they will be like, you know what, I'm really sorry. And I won't do that again. Or this is how I can change my behavior. That's normal behavior, but a narcissist can't and won't. So they'll pretend to you, they'll tell you everything you want to hear. But as soon as you poke it a little bit with a stick, let's say they've done something very malicious and cruel and horrible, and narcissists do. They do things that normal people just could not do, even on their worst day. And if they did do it on their worst day, they would be so apologetic and so devastated with their behavior. You would know it. A narcissist, this is normal operation. It's normal to them. And then what will happen is they will do it again and again. So they constantly reoffend, because if you were to say, this has hurt me so badly, I can't trust you, the narcissist will be something like, I've said I'm sorry. What more do you want to hear? What more do I need to give you? I told you I won't do it again, and it's not coming from the heart and it's not sincere, and it's not. And you're like, okay, well, I'll try and trust you. And sure enough, it happens again. So the apologies aren't genuine. The remorse, the remake is not genuine, and they just can't do it. So, and also the pathological lying, everybody could say a little white lie. Yes, honey, your bum doesn't look big in this dress, Right?
Yep.
Even though you African women have got the most beautiful tushes, you really do. We all admire your bottoms, they're beautiful. But you know, a narcissist will do whopping great lies about so many things.
Yeah.
Small lies, middle lies, huge lies, and they'll go into explicit detail about things, and you find out later and you go, that was just a whole story.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this is a false self. All narcissists have submerged their true self. They don't want to look at their wounds and their vulnerabilities and their unhealed stuff at all, and their, you know, genetic family traumas and all of those things. So they're actually deeply wounded individuals that have put in a false self, a character in its place. That's the ego, the false self. And this is constantly making up stories.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
believe these stories. They literally do. And that's why they can look you straight in the eye and they can tell you this incredible scriptured version of something that to them is very real. And you find out later and you think, the detail that went into that
Mm.
is unbelievable. But
Yeah.
the narcissist's whole life is a scripted version with them as the center of the universe, and everybody else is props and objects. So this is the entitlement, and the
Yeah.
entitlement is that this is all about me. You are here to serve me. And if you don't do it adequately, which is impossible, by the way, to appease a run amok ego that can
Yeah.
never be satisfied,
Yeah.
you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Oh,
So what you
yeah.
did right yesterday, tomorrow is not going to be any good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's these hoops all the time, and it keeps, the rules change. You cannot appease this person, no matter how many shapes you twist yourself into. You just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a very tough situation to have to live with. But, you know, as you're talking, the question that came to my mind is what causes people to be narcissists? Are they born with it? Is it a psychological problem? You know, where does it come from?
It's such a good question, Emma. And
Yeah.
really, where does it come from? The trauma of the human experience on this planet. All
Yeah.
dysfunction comes from trauma. And we know now through the great neurobiologists, we know that trauma is very hereditary. So
Yeah.
there are definitely people that are born with an enlarged amygdala, huge defense mechanisms, and they've come from families of traumatic, narcissistic or traumatic experiences, and they've pretty much got that online, and then they land smack bang into a family which is going to exactly be the representation of more of that trauma.
Yeah.
So this is, well, it's nature and nurture, and it can be both,
Yeah.
but there can be, a lot of it can absolutely be the nurture, you know, in that, let's say parents are trying to feather their children's nests too much and they're not getting them to take responsibility for their behavior and their actions, and they're allowing them to grow up as entitled and never understanding a boundary and never understanding no. Or it could be through neglect or abuse, or, you
Yeah.
know, very bad mirroring and changing patterns where the child decides that my inner being is not safe and it's not getting its needs met. So I'll just submerge it, cover it over, and put a false self in its place because that's my buffer in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
So
really, it's been about this whole illusion, which has been on this earth plane, about if I just get something outside of myself, I'm going to get inner peace and happiness, rather than I'm going to go direct to source and I'm going to be inner peace and happiness, regardless of what life is or isn't doing. And
yeah.
that's actually the way to create your life from the inside out, by saying no to what doesn't match that solidness and peace and inner happiness. Because when we're empty and we're trying to get stuff outside to become a self, well, then it's kind of like taping sandwiches onto yourself when you're hungry and trying to be satiated.
Yeah.
And that's the narcissist life. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, if we haven't worked that piece out and healed that, it actually makes us very susceptible to them as well.
Okay, so that even goes into my next question of, is there a
Okay.
particular kind of person who usually attracts narcissists?
There really is, Ama. There really is.
Wow.
There really is. And, you know, people will say a narcissist can take down anybody and they can fool anybody. It's not true. Now, that's actually good news, because we know that when we heal that part of ourselves, we're going to be able to be in life and be free and impervious to these people. I want your listeners to think of this. Let's say we've got a predator in the wild and he comes across a herd.
Yeah.
He's going to look for the injured animal at the edge of the pack with a limp to take it down.
Yeah.
Why? Because he needs to exert less energy getting the feed than the feed itself.
Sure.
Otherwise, he's not going to survive. Now,
Mm.
narcissists are a no self. They need to exert less energy in striking new supply to hook that person up as narcissistic supply. They need to exert less energy than the supply is going to give them.
Yeah.
At the payoff. A narcissist can't create their own emotional energy, their own life force. Think of vampires that need blood. It's actually the same thing. It literally is. So what does a narcissist look for? They're going to look for somebody who is feeling empty,
Yeah.
who is looking for love, approval, survival, and security outside of themselves. They're going to look for somebody that they can charm very quickly, who's not going to research, not going to do their due diligence, not going to take their time, because really the narcissist is a charade. It actually is.
Yeah.
And if you have boundaries and you take your time and you retain your life and you don't fall straight in, they're either going to go missing or they're going to try and hit you with a guilt trip or something to hook you quickly that's going to be a boundary violation and really inappropriate, childish and immature.
Wow.
And absolutely. And if you are solid in your own self, it'd be like if you've got a kitchen at home where you're cooking beautiful, nutritious food. Don Miguel Ruiz in The Mastery of Love wrote this beautiful chapter. It's so amazing about how a woman is in a kitchen and she's cooking beautiful, nutritious food. In other words, she's full and she's self-sustained through source. And this guy knocks on the door with a greasy pizza and she goes, "No, thank you, I don't need it." But yet the same guy knocked on another woman's pizza. She's starving. She's not feeding herself. There's a greasy pizza and she's like, "Oh God, I'm so hungry. I want it." And he goes, "You have to accept any condition that I give you, but I'll bring you pizza every day, but you have to accept any condition that goes with it." And she's so starving, she takes the pizza.
Wow.
This is exactly narcissism. So we might go, well, how do we get full? How do we get love? How do we be love and fullness and solidness and good boundary function? We really do that by resolving our past hurts.
Yeah.
And that wounded child within who never felt solid and never felt whole. Because for me, you know, I was really successful. I was great at anything I did. I was very, A-type, high functioning, successful person. And this is very common. Very common. This is what narcissists will look out for because they want somebody like that. There's lots of goodies to get. But emotionally, I was high functioning really as a buffer to how I felt on the inside, which was unloved, unlovable, not good enough to be loved.
Yeah.
All of those things. So I was, because my family, good family, but you're acknowledged for what you achieved.
Yeah.
So anyway, what I'm saying is the bottom line here, it doesn't matter how successful, intelligent you are, if there's those parts of you that are still wounded, that you don't feel like you are lovable and approved of by source, your higher power, and whole with that simply because you exist and you have that well-stocked kitchen what it means is a well-stocked kitchen, like that woman with the pizza. She's like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
And let's say he had a box and she didn't know what was in it with food. She would say, all right, well, let's open that box and I'm going to examine all of that. And I'm going to stand back and I'm not going to say yes until I see what all those ingredients are, what they would mean for me, and what would be the repercussions of this, because I'm already whole. I don't need to accept anything unless it adds more wholeness. I'm not trying to get me through you. I've already got me.
Yes.
And when we have that, I promise you, narcissists are so easy to get to unravel. It is ridiculous. Because when they realize you're whole, you're solid, you can't be charmed, you can't be coerced, you can't be promised. You know, one of the major ways that a narcissist can get into a woman's life, they'll be on a date and he'll say, well, what hurt you in the past? And she'll say, well, you know, my husband played up on me, or, you know, they never saw me, I was never important. All he has to do is mimic her body language, look her straight in the eyes and say with complete sincerity, maybe with watering eyes, oh my God, they're so good at it. He will say, my God, how could anybody treat you like that? I could never, ever do that to a woman I loved. And she's like, oh my God, he's mine.
I found the one.
That's it. And they do it. They do it.
Exactly.
So when they do it. So when a narcissist, if you run a date with them, and mind you, when you're healing up and you're becoming that solid bison at the middle of the pack who can't be taken down by a predator, you will welcome sitting there, you're having a date with a narcissist, and how you will know is he or she will say, well, what happened in your past? And you'll say, well, you know, look, I had a full-on experience. There was, you know, there was abuse and there was things in it. But what is so awesome is it brought me home to myself, to heal myself up, for me to grow my boundaries. It was such an amazing experience. And watch their head spin. Watch their head spin. And then they'll say to you, oh, well, I'm really into personal development. Here you go. Great. What have you read? What have you learned?
Nothing.
Oh, they'll come up with some crap. And then, you know, and you keep calling them out. You keep calling them out. You know, there was a date I went on with one guy, and third date, look, he was ticked all the boxes, gorgeous, attractive, successful, funny, because they are, charming, really into me. Third date, kept it totally platonic, always met him at a restaurant, never come to my house, you know, because I still didn't know who you were.
Yeah.
Very important. Anyway, we're sitting there. He's like, how do you think our third date's going? And he'd been talking about people at work in a really nasty way. Like the mask was starting to slip. I've come back from the bathroom and he asked me, how's the date going? I said, well, you know, actually, you talking about people in a really disparaging way, I find that quite disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
He popped like a firecracker.
Wow.
He's like, how dare you speak to me? I will not have anybody. This date is over. And I've just sat back and thought, whoa, watch the narcissist go off like a firecracker. And I walked back to the car, punching the air in so much joy. I'm like, look at you go, girl. I'm so proud of you. You said the truth. The old me would have sat there and gone, oh, no, everybody can be a bit like that. He's so cute. I mightn't get this opportunity again. No, that was nothing. And he would have said, how do you think our date's going? Oh, wonderful. The old me would have done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I am developed and healed and so full in myself. If something doesn't feel right, you know, brother, I'm going to speak about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to show up honestly. If you show up honestly and authentically, honoring you, you honor the entire field in honorable ways. He showed his true colors. I didn't have to go through another 2, 3, 5, 10 years of disaster.
Yeah, that's true. So then from what you're talking, then we women really need to do our inner self work, build our self-confidence, our self-esteem, take care of ourselves, self-care emotionally, mentally, because that's how we are able to strengthen our sense of self, you know. Yeah.
everything, Emma.
Yeah.
It's everything. And, we're coming out of that shift of when we look back at the women before us. I even know in my culture, 250 years ago, if, well, even, gosh, up to sometimes 60, 70 years ago, if a woman was thrown out by her man, she had no rights to any money. She would either
Yeah.
have to become a prostitute or a nun. And even in Melbourne, Australia, there were women putting their babies, single mothers, in the Yarra because they couldn't feed them and drowning them.
Wow.
So I think for so many of us, and I don't want to blame men at all, there's beautiful, incredible men in the world of every single culture. And we need to grow up to realize that too, and
Yeah.
not be man haters. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the more you hate men, the more you're going to get men that you hate.
Mm.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
But what we have to do is grow ourselves up to be a source of love, approval, survival, and security, and then be really healthy in our body, making healthy choices. And good men love that. They
Yeah.
love a woman that respects herself. They love a woman that takes her time. A good man will want to get to know you as well. But
Mm.
we might think that what we're looking for is, oh, you love the same music I do. You love going for walks. And a narcissist will pretend that every time, that they love exactly what you love, and they don't really love anything apart from getting your narcissistic supply and bleeding you dry and using you for their own energy source. They couldn't care less what they have to pretend they like. But what you are looking for is values.
Yeah.
Is somebody kind? Do the actions match the words? Are they somebody who takes responsibility? Are they people that has a benevolent spirit? Are
Yeah.
they somebody who is looking for to be a team with you? Because narcissists aren't. And are they into solution building? When you have disruptions, when you don't agree, and you don't want to agree with people even on dates, be yourself, be truthful, don't be the
Yeah.
yes girl,
Yeah.
right? Are they
Mm-hmm.
somebody who will listen to another point of view, who will look at solutions? Or do they cancel and abuse and project onto you if you don't agree with them? Before you give up your body, your heart, your soul, your bed, your hearth, your finances, all of that, the beautiful man I'm with, and he's life partner. He's such a soulmate. He's gorgeous. We dated platonically for 3 months, and
Yeah.
he became one of my best friends before
Yeah.
we went to bed.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's
Wow.
no good waking up next to somebody and you're saying, well, I'm chemically sexually attracted to you, but I don't like who you are.
Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Everything you're talking about is so good and juicy.
Like
But
to say it how it is.
yes, I just love it. I honestly, and that's why I like you. One term I've seen a lot out there is covert narcissism. Can
Uh-huh.
you talk a bit about that? What is it?
Yeah, look, I'd love to talk about that. And look, let's just be very, very clear. Every narcissist is covert because they
Okay.
all hide their narcissism. And really, the only difference is an overt narcissism is, they're at the life of the party. They're kind of big and they've got big hubris and they're like, and they're usually sexy and they've got good bodies and they're good looking, or they're just a power broker type. That's your overt narcissist, where your covert's more, I'm going to kind of stand at the back and I'm going to observe, and I prefer to like single people out and then I show off my intelligence or my brilliance and I'm going to do it. But what I was saying before about getting to know people, and don't get into the chemical rush and give yourself away, and
Yeah.
also to make sure you have got to have a life. We've all got to have a life. You've got to have your friends, your interests, your missions, your passions, yourself.
Mm.
Because then when you meet somebody, How often do women just fall straight in and my life is his life and I never had a life, or I gave my life over? And then if he's going to start being not so nice and
Yeah.
even horrifically abusive, you may have a terror of going back to no life, or you have no life.
Yeah.
So when you meet somebody, covert or overt, say to them, I can't see you Thursday night. I'm catching up with a girlfriend for dinner.
Yeah.
I'm not going to cancel that. I have this that I do. You know, yes, I'll make time for you and I'll start phasing you in, but honey, I'm not giving up my life.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
narcissist will hang around for that because they need to monopolize you.
Oh.
They will not.
Yeah.
And they will try to guilt you and kick you out of that. And they'll either disappear. And if you've done enough work on your abandonment programs, you go, good, the rubbish just took itself out. Or it wasn't for me. It wasn't a source truth for me.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Or they will try and hit you with a guilt trip or a twist or a turn, or they'll even say to you, well, you know, I've got 4 or 5 other people that I'm dating, and if you're not going to be available, I'll go down that track. And you go, okay, goodbye.
Yeah. That's it.
Next.
Yeah. 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 Let's talk about the cycles, because I know that narcissistic abuse has some kind of cycles that happen.
Absolutely.
So if you can even talk briefly about it so that a woman out there can spot it if they're going through some form of cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first is idolize, you know, which is you're the best thing since poached eggs. And narcissists really pump up. They do, because the thing is for them, it's all about a hit of narcissistic supplies. So they'll decide you're the most sexy, you're the most intelligent, you've got the best life, you've got, they're going to, and you know, because idolize is like, oh, I'm going to show you off to my family really quickly. I'm going to brag about you. I'm going to post all about you on social media. I'm going to make out this and that and the other. And it's childish. It's completely childish. But that's the narcissist getting their drug of narcissistic supply as high as they can get it. Then what happens is real life kicks in, and then the false self is going to start getting very bent out of shape if it doesn't get the expectations and the conditions that it demands to try to feel peace. Because the thing is, their inner being is forever, it's so injured and wounded and catatonic and screaming that the narcissist is constantly having the inner critic. They're living in a living hell, and they're medicating with narcissistic supply to buffer that out and to self-medicate. So you're the drug. Now, if you are not greeting them at the door in the right way, if you don't look at them in the right way, if you go off with a friend and they feel like that you're ignoring them or whatever, they get triggered on a hairline. So they're going to start doing what is known as devaluing. So they're going to try to get you out of energy coming from anywhere else and energy just on them, and they get nasty. They become nasty people. The discard is what happens when they get to a point where it's either to punish you, to get space, to go off with new supply, which is very, very common. And they've had new supply usually lined up for quite some time as soon as the cracks appear. Or because you are so battered and emptied out and so destroyed, there's nothing more to gain from you. So it's like, you know, throwing away something when you've sucked it dry. There's nothing more to get. So devalue happens. So the final devalue will be when there's nothing more to get from you. The other devalues can go in cycles. So it's a cycle of violence, and every cycle of violence happens like this, is that you have a build up to an event, then you have the explosion. And of course, it doesn't have to be physical. It can be mental, whatever, emotional. And then what happens is you have a separation, which could be emotionally or literally. Then what you have is the makeup. So the makeup period is either we crawl back and hand over more of our values and our boundaries to keep connected, or the narcissist will hoover back in, you know, with crocodile tears, false promises, whatever. So then you make up And you may even think, oh my God, okay, well, they get it. Or I can change, I can do something different. So it could be almost like a honeymoon period,
Yeah.
right? You're at the top of the peak.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens, it's like the music in Jaws, where it's like do, 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 do. Under the surface, tension is building. And it's usually
Mm.
just when everything feels amazing, like you wake up, you turn, you face each other, you feel in love. And then they'll look at you and they'll go, you know what? I'm not sure I did the right thing. I don't know if I love you anymore.
Wow.
Or something horrific. Or they'll start an argument, or you might sabotage and, well, you're not really, because you're kind of freaking out. Is this really right? So anyway, tension builds, another explosion happens, you separate, you come
Yeah.
back together, tension builds. So this is a cycle of violence, and this is what narcissistic relationships are. And the intensity of the blow-ups gets worse. The cycle happens faster, and it's more impactful, and it's more destructive. So that's what, and the thing is, decent relationships of teamwork and solution building and good people with good characters, what
Yeah.
happens is when you have issues, then you work them out and
Mm-hmm.
the relationship evolves in vibration and closeness and togetherness and understanding. And, I'm in a soulmate relationship, and after 3 years, we get closer all the time because that's a healthy relationship. Two
Yeah.
people with those capacities. But in narcissistic relationships, they are spiraling downwards into complete and utter disintegration rather than integration. And they're going into dissolution instead of evolution. They're not,
Wow.
they go down, not up.
Yeah. 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 So for a woman who may be facing these cycles,
Yeah.
how can she even take what first step can be taken to even break that cycle? I know that you have a lot
Yeah.
of material that we want to point people to go,
Yeah.
read, but
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
even for the first step, what
Yeah.
to do if you're seeing some signs and you're not even too sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Detach. Emma, the thing is, with normal people, with solution building, you can get in there and you can work with it. With a narcissist, you can't, because they don't want love. They don't want togetherness. They don't want solution building. They don't want peace. They don't want harmony. All of those things are actually disgusting to a narcissist's false self. They don't
Yeah.
want that. So if you're in cycles like this, and this person, all the things I talked about before, if they pathologically lie, if they don't take
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, if they don't care, they don't have consideration, they don't validate your feelings and they're not interested in them, actions mean everything. Forget what they say to you. Well, then you're in a cycle of violence. So what you need to do is pull back, detach, stop feeding it, stop participating with it, and look at healing yourself to get your soul, your sanity, and your life force back.
Yeah.
And then what you could really do with that, maybe you're not really sure whether this person has the capacity to change or not. Then you would have boundaries, and boundaries are this. And boundaries, only you need to get them. The other person never has to agree. It is, I am only going to live in an environment with these values: care,
Yeah.
consideration, truth, honesty, and solution building, nothing else.
Yeah.
And if that's
Yeah.
not where you want to be and what you want to do, well, then we're done. And I know
Yeah.
that can be scary as heck, but I've seen thousands of women go through that. I lost everything, and rebuilt. But what I won, Emma, was my soul. And when I got that right between me and Source, everything came in such prosperity and flow and beauty.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen this happen for even women that have gone into shelters, even in their 60s.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And women in
Wow.
their 80s who have left, who now have got beautiful partners and amazing lives and family
Yeah.
returned, and everything. If you honor your
Yeah.
soul, everything will fall into place. But it's
Yep.
scary as heck.
Yep. Yep. That's
Yep.
true.
It really
That is
is.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the consequences that you're talking about, because even with you, going to that place of all that mental illness,
Yeah.
fibromyalgia, all those sicknesses, adrenaline
Yeah.
issues,
Yeah.
it's literally sounds like it
Yeah.
sucked everything out of you.
I was told I would never recover and I would never get well and I would never function normally again. That's what I was told.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm on no medications. I have zero symptoms
Wow.
and I've never been healthier and happier, and my life just gets better and better.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. And I love
Yeah.
what you said, that you need to first focus on you, focus on what
Oh,
you have control over, you,
yes.
and that's you and your wellness. And that's my core message. I talk a lot about this. I'm so
Love
passionate
that.
about it. And your self-care, focus on healing yourself mentally, emotionally, because spiritually, because if you don't, then it's like that wound, and you can't fight if you're wounded, right? You can't grow and become a better you if you're wounded emotionally and mentally. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And we can grow and heal and ascend, not despite our wounds, but actually because of them.
Yeah. Yeah,
And it's
that's true.
exciting when you start doing that work and you start getting results, and you just realize how every time you're turning a survival wound into a source consciousness release, how much creativity, power, joy, and forward movement you get, more than you could have ever got if you didn't have those wounds to catapult them around.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And it's
Yeah.
funny, I tell people a lot that we women, we are so busy. We have our hair done, our makeup done, everything done, trying to keep up appearances, right? But we are so battered inside. And I think that's what makes
Yes.
narcissistic abuse very dangerous, because you
Yes.
don't have anything physical. If you have physical wounds, people are going to ask, people are going to be concerned. But when it's
Yes.
inside and it's being covered up, it's like it's killing your soul and your inner being, your inner core. And that's what really makes who you are as a person. So,
It's
yeah,
so true, Emma.
yeah,
It's so true. And it's so true that I think women are trying to hold their families together. They're trying to keep the household together. They're trying to keep everybody's lives together while they're falling apart on the inside.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. I love everything. And this conversation is awesome. I wish we could go on and on and on, but our time is up. But, before you go, where can we find you? Where can my
Okay.
audience follow up? Because I think that I'm sure some of the women who listen would want to check you out.
Yeah, I hope so. And our community is amazing. It's so loving, it's so empowering, it's so solution based, and it's very, very real. So, yeah, come over to melanietoniaevans.com. And I've got a stack of free resources there. So there's a 16-day free course, 2 really powerful ebooks, an email every day, no matter what your circumstance. It's going to give you a lot of answers, clarity, and a lot of your soul back. And also, too, for those of you, we have a signature healing course that, humbly, I really do believe that it's the most powerful course that we know of in our
Mhm.
community to help people recover from narcissistic abuse powerfully in a straight line from the inside out. And that's the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Program. It's known as NARP, NARP. So you can check that out too. If what I've been talking about really, really touches your heart and your spirit, have a look at it, because that's the fastest way to heal that I can offer you.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. And usually the one thing I do with my guests when they come is I talk about the last words. And usually I want you to say something even in relation to
Mm.
COVID. I feel like COVID-19 has increased a lot of domestic violence, and even,
Mm.
because people are stuck in their homes, and probably if they're in narcissistic relationships,
Yeah.
they're stuck at home with the abuser. There's no safe place. So for
Yeah.
that
I
woman out
agree.
there who may feel,
Mm.
empty, the pandemic has affected her, she wants to give up on life, what are your
Yeah.
latest words to her? Just words of encouragement to her.
I think, you know, for all of us, we're going through this huge shift in humanity,
Yeah.
which we're really, all of us are really submerged in the darkness, whether it be in our personal lives, certain people around us, even people we're living with, our whole uh, cultures, the whole collective, our governments. You know, there's so many questions and so many things that we're all having to really face. I believe that this time is about facing everything inside of us that's been broken and insecure and hurt, and really holding that with love, releasing it, bringing in source and connecting to source and resetting to be the light, the power, the truth, and the authenticity that we're all born to be
Mm.
for ourselves, our children, and our world. And I don't think there's any more important time to do this shift and this work than now.
Yeah, 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 that's true. I always say that the pandemic gave everybody the opportunity to reset their lives and start afresh. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And our
yeah,
world needs this, and we're
that's
doing
true.
this.
That is
And that's
true.
exactly what my work does. It releases your trauma, your dark, insecure, scared parts, and fills you up with who you were born to be. That's what my work does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. And on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for, taking time off your very busy schedule. I know it has taken us months to get you in here, but I'm so grateful you're
It's
here.
my joy, Ama, and I'd love to come back sometime.
Yes, of course. I think that there's a lot more to talk about here, and we'll definitely make that happen. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
gorgeous. Thank you.
Awesome,
And
awesome.
lots of love to everybody. And please don't give up hope. There's more than hope for you. Your soul was meant to break through. It really was.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
is.
That's true. That's true. Awesome. True. Awesome. And on that note, as Melanie said, don't give up hope. Again, my name is Alma Brew, your life balance strategist. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button because every week we're coming to you with new episodes and you don't want to miss out on anything. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Empowered for Balance, all one word, on Facebook, Instagram, on Pinterest, and on Twitter. All right. So take care of yourself, and I hope to talk to you next week. Bye.